Welcome back to the Caniac Chronicles, folks. It's episode 26 of season 1. Do appreciate you returning. This episode, we're going to get into a little bit of something happening non-Carolina Hurricanes related really quick, especially per the request of one of my best good buddies from high school. We'll get in a little something that is kind of exciting for probably at least one team who's definitely not making the playoffs, and one other one that is probably not either. We'll get into the standings at large and where Carolina sits, a quick recap, and then we're going to go into the performance we've seen of some of the players up until this point, and just kind of talk briefly. I don't think it's going to be too long of an episode this go around, but we'll see how long we go here for. Anyways, the big talk of the town across the league these days, we've had our third goalie fight this year. I haven't fact checked this, but I mean, just off of the feel, I think it's pretty accurate. This is the first season in 22 years we've seen this many goalie fights. So the most goalie fights in the last 2 decades in a single season. So we had Bobrovsky and I think it was Decord go toe-to-toe early in the season. We had, I believe it was Vasilevsky and Swayman shortly after that, if my memory serves me. And then just a couple nights ago, I think it was a couple nights ago, Markstrom and Shesterkin went after it. And so there you go. The two teams, that don't really have a dog in the fight. Actually, of all those teams that I've mentioned, only half of them are in there. The Vasilevsky with the Lightning, Swayman with the Bruins, and Decord is still in the mix with the Kraken. It's a dogfight for both of the wild card positions, both in the East and the West. And we'll get into that soon. But yeah, it was a good fight. All 3 fights this season for the goalies have been pretty good. I thought I saw it in the middle of the highlight of the Hurricanes game the other night, and so I guess it was actually last night because the Hurricanes played last night. It's Wednesday night right now, the April 1st. So happy April Fool's Day if you celebrate. But yeah, Markstrom came all the way down the ice. Shesterkin was getting in the mix, and actually the one thing I did want to point out is I saw an angle recorded from, it was a fan, recording, I believe. I believe it was posted on Spit and Chicklets, so go check it out if you want to see it for yourself. But the angle is from center ice, and it's on the opposite side, laterally of the ice as to the side, the corner that the goaltenders were fighting in. So if you look, you're looking down at the opposite corner to your left, if you will. And if you look in the background, you can see 2 former Hurricanes, Vinny Trocheck and Dougie Hamilton. It was a team skirmish, obviously, before the goalies ended up fighting. So Trocheck and Hamilton are still, holding on to each other, and then in the middle of what was going on between them, they see the goaltender fight unfold right in front of them, and they remain in this, locked position of holding each other's chest plate pretty tightly, but they're both smiling. They're not, they're completely disengaged with one another, and they're just staring at the 2 goalies in front of them that are going toe-to-toe. And that just, that cracked me up. I think it was really fitting that they were both, former Hurricanes. I do believe that they were also teammates. I think they were on the team at the same time. So that was really, funny to see, really entertaining to watch. I would highly encourage you to go seek out that other opposite angle if you haven't seen it already. And again, I do believe it was on Spit and Chicklets. If it wasn't posted there, I would probably check Blind Ref Logic, I believe, is the other account that might have posted it. So good little fight there, good little tussle. Definitely saw, Shesterkin probably taking a lot of his frustration out of this team, out on Markstrom personally there. But the guy deserves it. He's been him and Zibanejad, and more so him, have really been the two pillars of that franchise in the last season, at least the last couple of seasons. So good stuff there from those guys. Again, shout out to my good friend from high school. He definitely wanted me to bring that up, so I had to. And anyways, I did figure out a way to tie it back to the Canes, so all good. All right, anyways, moving on. Let's get a bigger picture. Let's get a bigger look at the standings. So after last night, we've got Buffalo achieving the 100-point mark. We've got Carolina achieving the 100-point mark. They join Dallas and Colorado as the only other two teams with 100 total points or more. But right behind, at least Buffalo is Tampa Bay, and even Montreal is starting to make a push as well. They both have a game in hand, and Tampa is 2 points out from 100, and Montreal is 4 points out from 100. So that divisional race is very close, which also kind of ties into the Eastern Conference race. Who's going to lead the Eastern Conference and have home ice advantage at least through that half of the playoffs. Carolina in the mix as well, but Pittsburgh is all but out of that race at this point. They're 8 games behind. They have one less game to play than Carolina. It is still mathematically possible, but at this point, it's just unlikely. Moving down into the wild card race, I would say the Bruins pretty confidently have the first wild card wrapped up right now. They have the same amount of games played as Columbus and Columbus and Ottawa, and they've got a 6-point lead on Columbus and an 8-point lead on Ottawa. So there's a lot of ground there to make up, actually including including Philadelphia. So Philly, Detroit, and Ottawa all have 86 points. They all have 74 games played. And Ottawa right now is sitting in the lead somehow. I don't know, because it would appear the tiebreakers to me weigh in favor of Detroit. I don't know if that's a website glitch or if that's an anomaly there, but I would think that Detroit has the highest row, which is, regulation overtime wins. Ottawa has the regulation win tiebreaker. They have 32 wins in regulation. Detroit's got 28, and Philly only has 23. So that explains that there. That makes more sense. Anyways, likely that Boston gets that first wild card position there. They could even push into their division. I mean, they're right on the tails of Montreal. They do have one extra game played and 2 points behind. So they've got some ground to make up as well, but it is possible that they step into that divisional spot. But for all intents and purposes, somebody from the Atlantic Division is probably going to get that first wild card position, which will likely end up facing either us or Buffalo, depending on how the top falls at the end of the year. And then the more entertaining race, or the more, competitive race, is Columbus, sitting in wild card 2 with 75 games played, 88 points. We did kind of snuff them out. They had an opportunity last night to really create some space between themselves and those outer teams, Ottawa, Detroit, Philly. Even Washington is in the mix, being only 3 points out, same amount of games played. And all 4 of those teams had lost last night, and so it was really Columbus's opportunity there to get some points and again create some gap there between them and that line for the wild card. But we ended that. We took that away from them. I really hope we can do that again tomorrow, Thursday night in Carolina, because it would really not only add to the competitiveness of that wild card spot, but I really would like to try and keep Columbus out of the playoffs this season, if possible. It would be really nice. I would much rather face a Detroit, Philly, or Ottawa team in the first round than Columbus, as I've kind of mentioned in I think last week's episode, to be honest. So that is a really tight battle there for those final two wild cards, and it's just as crammed in the West Coast. So their divisions are pretty well locked up, I would say. Let me just sort this on division quick. Yeah, Los Angeles is the first team behind Vegas. So we've got the Pacific. We've got the Anaheim Ducks leading the Pacific. They're 87 points in the standings. They've got 74 games played. As long as they keep on pace, they'll probably end up holding on to that lead, holding on to the title there in that division. The only thing is they wouldn't have the tiebreaker for the Edmonton if Edmonton were to tie them. So they do got to kind of stay with the pace and keep ahead there. And I've got a good college buddy out in Anaheim who's a big Ducks fan. So rooting for them, for him. And then, Edmonton right behind them, 85 points, 75 games played. They've had a fairly mediocre season, but they have managed to find their way into a playoff spot. It really helps that they are in that soft division of the Pacific. As Connor McDavid put it best, it's basically a pillow fight out there. But they're in it. They find themselves in a position here, and there's not really any competition for anyone to knock them out. Vegas, the overtime loss point merchants, 16 of their points have come from overtime losses, and they do have 82 with 7 games left to play in the season. The only one who would be pressing that division is LA, and the LA Kings would find themselves in a wild card spot, to be honest, before they find themselves in a division spot. So a lot less likely for anyone from the Pacific Division in those divisional spots to be knocked out or thrusted into the wild card mix, but we'll see. I guess anything can happen. And then obviously the Central Division is probably the strongest division in terms of the three teams coming from that division for those divisional spots. You have Colorado and Dallas, who are both officially clinched for the playoffs. Oh, by the way, Carolina's clinching will probably come in the next game or two. All it's going to take is a single point in the standings and an Ottawa, Detroit, Philly loss anywhere along the way. Or really just, if you get 4 points in the standings while they're still winning as well, you end up clinching a playoff spot. So Carolina's right around the corner on that. And then Minnesota wrapping up the Central Division with Dallas and Colorado. And no one is anywhere close to touching them. So we move on to the wild card. We've got Utah leading the pack with 82 points. We've got Nashville. Who'd have thought? Nashville sitting behind them in wild card 2. And that wild card 2 is probably, similar to the East. It's just wild card 2 really that's up for grabs now. Utah has made a good amount of space between them and that line. They've got a 5-point lead over Nashville with the same amount of games left to play, so they just got to stay on that pace, stay with the momentum, and that wild card position is more than likely theirs. But looking on the outside in, you've got the LA Kings, you've got the Winnipeg Jets, both with 76 points, both having 2 very different seasons, but both, struggling along the way. San Jose having a very roller coaster up and down ride, as well as Seattle. They both have 75 points with respectively 72 and 73 games played. So San Jose's got 10 games left. The Kraken have 9. And then right behind them is St. Louis with 73. They've got 9 games left to play as well. And even still mathematically in the mix is Calgary and to an extent Chicago. Calgary is sitting at 70 points with 8 games left to play. And Chicago really needs to, I would say, win out at this point. But they are sitting at 68 points, which is 9 points out from the line and 8 games left to play. So, again, Chicago really has to win out to really make a push of any kind here. Really, so does Calgary. But everybody from that 7th seed and up, St. Louis, Seattle, San Jose, Winnipeg, and Los Angeles, could all find themselves knocking Nashville or any combination of those teams I just listed in and out of that spot. It's really going to come down to the wire, I feel, for the West. Probably the East too, but I would say that I think the West is probably going to be a lot closer than the East. The East has a lot of top heaviness to it, and so I could see probably Columbus or any of those teams beneath them maybe walking away with it here. We'll see. I mean, we'll see. All 5 of those teams lost last night and didn't do anything in the standings, so it might end up turning into that for the East as well. But it's a very tight race, both sides, a very exciting one. This is one of the best times of the season. If you're a team on top of the league, if you're a team pretty solidly in one of those divisional spots, this is your time to relax, to kick back, watch around the league, check, kind of scout what we might end up seeing throughout the playoffs and maybe even in the finals. But probably the last time in the season that you can relax before you really need to start locking in as a fan and starting to feel those emotions, those nerves, that anxiety along with the players throughout the run. But it's shaping up to be one of the more competitive, races to the playoffs that I think we've seen in recent years. So I'm really excited to see, what teams we do end up seeing in that final wild card spot for both the East and the West come, a couple weeks from now, really. Moving on, let's get into the point spread here for the players on Carolina. So, as usual with this Carolina team, we don't really have that standout guy. For example, I believe Macklin Celebrini just achieved his 100th point in the league this season the other night. There's numerous guys out there. I'm thinking the Lightning, the Oilers, maybe some folks on Vegas, although I haven't specifically looked. But, a lot of these teams carry players that end up walking into the playoffs with 100-plus points on their back from the regular season. Now, if you've been following the channel, you know that I had really high hopes this season of Sebastian Aho eclipsing that 100-point mark. And while, again, it's still doable, it's really, really unlikely at this point. He's leading the team with 75 points. He's been very cold as of late, and he's only got 8 games left to play. So he needs just over 3 points a game here to close out that century mark in points. It would be the first time in his career. I do believe his previous high was 86 or 89 points. So even 90 points at this point would be a new record, new season high for him. That's a lot more doable. He only needs 15 points to achieve that. But again, that is still just over 2 points a game, and he is just extremely cold right now. And it's not for trying. Fortunately or unfortunately, I say unfortunately because I did have a fairly substantial wager on FanDuel for it, hoping to get a pretty nice payout, which probably won't cash out. But he's been on the ice for a lot of goals, and especially with regards to the power play, with regards to just 5-on-5 in general, even some shorthanded attempts where he's been there and, they've scored, but he was one pass too many in terms of the succession of the assist, or he just, was there in some other capacity on the ice, whether it be a distraction or sitting on the back door, for example. I believe that happened on the power play for last night's game against the Blue Jackets. There's at one point where, somebody shoots the puck and scores, and he's standing, he's near the net, he's ready for the rebound, he's ready for the backdoor pass, whatever it might be, but someone else just puts it in before he can even get a touch, and that's not a bad thing. But, like I said, kind of like I mentioned without getting into the point at this segment of the podcast, is this team is just, the points are very well, spread out across the roster here. There's only one player on this roster who doesn't have a goal yet, and that's Jacob Slavin. And don't forget, he's missed a pretty significant amount of games, 40 games to be exact. He's only played 34 this season. And again, that was likely due to wanting to be fully ready, fully able, in Milan and in Italy, which ended up paying dividends for him. He probably got ultimately what he was really hoping for, which is that gold medal out there. So, but everybody else, including some folks, some of the more taxi squad folks that are out there, like Nystrom and Nadeau and Alexei Legault. Excuse me. Everybody else has goals. Even Mike Riley. KK, he's got 2 goals. William Carrier's got 6. That kind of surprised me. Chatfield's got 2. Jankowski's got 8. Walker's got 7. Miller has 6. And everybody else is at least a double-digit scorer or more, including Alexander Nikishin, having a phenomenal year. Shane Gostisbehere, 13. And the point totals are spread out as well. It's for the most part, everybody has double digits. The leaders, we have Aho at 75 points. We have Svechnikov with 64, as well as Nikolai Ehlers, who has tied his season high on both points and assists. So that's 40 assists with 64 points. He's going to probably end up breaking both of those season highs and having his best season in the NHL with the Carolina Hurricanes this year. And that's something really exciting. That's something that's really neat to have as a Hurricanes fan, and a claim to have now with Carolina, because Ehlers has been a guy who's been talked about for quite a while in Winnipeg, and him, including Hall and some other folks, but those two players, especially in my mind, it would be fantastic if we could give both of those guys their first Stanley Cup ring. Especially for Hall. Hall has so much hardware. I was looking at that just now. In fact, let's get into it. Hall has tons and tons of hardware, from World Junior gold medals to World Championship gold medals to a couple CHL Memorial Cup champions trophies, Rookies of the Year, second All-Star, NHL first teams. He's won the Hart Award too, the Hart Trophy with New Jersey before. He's a 2-time OHL champion, a one-time first all rookie team guy from the OHL, but he obviously just does not have that elusive Stanley Cup ring, and that would be fantastic if it would be the Hurricanes who brought it to him. I would be so elated over that, because Hall, being the first pick overall by the Edmonton Oilers, also happens to be the first season of eligibility I would have had if I, ended up going into the NHL. So that's a little bit of nostalgia to me. He's been in the league for a very long time, and he's garnered a fair amount of points across the league. And he's been he's been one of the most journeyman players I've ever seen. I was looking at his resume before I started recording here, and I couldn't believe some of the teams that he was on. But he's been with the Oilers, obviously. He's been with the Devils as well. He had a pretty good stint with them, and then he did a brief stint, a 35-game, session with the Arizona Coyotes of all teams. And then he was the following season, he was briefly on the Buffalo Sabres before getting traded to Boston. Boston kept him for those 2 years, and he did have a playoff appearance in all 3 of those seasons before being sent to Chicago for the 2023-2024 season. And then obviously last year, in the middle of the 2024-2025 season, he gets traded to Carolina in that infamous Mikko Rantanen trade, or redistribution, if you will. Or no, I think he was part of the he was part of the trade that sent Mikko out. That's right. And then he signs with Carolina this season, and he's been a top performer his entire career with a few 20-goal plus seasons. His best season was probably with New Jersey in the 2017-2018 season. He played 76 games. He ended up potting 39 goals. That's a career high, if I can do my math quickly enough. Yes, that is a career high, and his point total that season was also a career high with 93 points. This season with Carolina, he's very even keeled. He's got 15 goals and 25 assists so far for an even 40 points in total. That's across 74 games played, and he's heading that Logan Stankoven and Jackson Blake line, and I think everybody in Carolina really enjoys that line. It's a lot of fun to watch. Again, I'll say this again because I feel very adamant about it, and that's I really feel like that lead line needs to be split up, specifically Blake and Stankoven. I think those guys they're undersized, and I think they're going to get exposed for being undersized come the playoffs. And on top of that, they're both right-handed shots, and this team just does not have much of that. And I really would like to see those right-handed shots get broken up and kind of spread around this roster, because the roster needs it. We need that extra right-handed shot to maybe be brought to some other line. And come playoffs, who knows? We'll see if it's a first day of the playoff thing. We'll see if Rod lets them test the waters for a while and makes the decision halfway through the playoffs or at whatever point. But I do feel pretty confidently that we'll end up seeing them split up and put on separate lines for the playoffs for those two main reasons. Moving on to another journeyman, one of my favorite guys out there is Jordan Staal. Jordan Stahl's been in the league since 2006, 2007. He spent most of his time in the beginning with the Pittsburgh Penguins, but he's spent the vast majority of his time since, actually the unanimous amount of his time with the Carolina Hurricanes, as you all know. And Stahl is having a really nice, really reinvigorating season this year. He's been put on the power play. It's a cool little technique that Rod has implemented with Stahl. He has Stahl go out there with the Aho, Jarvis, Svechnikov line to begin the power play to hopefully guarantee, that face-off possession. And if he doesn't win that face-off, or if the the offensive hold kind of crumbles pretty quickly, he makes his way to the bench and Ehlers comes out in substitute for him. So it's a really good system, and it's gotten Stahl a fair amount of points and goals specifically. He's just been playing a lot more of that well-rounded profile this year, and that just simply means, in my opinion, he's out on the ice more, and if you're out on the ice more, you're going to have more opportunities to score goals. So he's one goal away from 20, which won't be his season high. His season high was actually his very first season. He scored 29 goals with Pittsburgh. He's gotten to the mid-20s a number of times since then, but he's only hit 20 with Carolina one season, and that was back in 2015, 2016. So if he does get one more goal this season, he will tie that season high with the Carolina Hurricanes, and it'll be the first time in about 9 seasons since he's, it'll be the first time in 10 seasons, that he'll have the 20 goal mark. He's got 32 points, so 13 assists there. And those, I think that's a lot due to the line that he's with. He tends to be with Martinook and Carrier. And those guys are just the grinded out folks. Those are the guys you're going to be seeing, in my opinion, scoring a lot more in the playoffs, scoring those pivotal goals, those insurance goals if you're in the lead for any given game, those goals that are clutch and keep you in a game, or maybe begin your surge for a comeback in whatever game. Those saving grace goals, I would say. That's sort of where I see Stahl. This success, I hope, in the regular season translates into the postseason in that capacity, because you do need those third and fourth line guys to score those grinded out lines. And I really want to see I really want to see, Stahl hoist the cup as a captain for this team too. He's put a lot of time in with this team. He's been with us since 2012, 2013, and that means he's been through a lot in both not making the playoffs and making the playoffs. So I think of all the players on this team, he probably deserves it the most, and I would love to see it for him. And then kind of circling back to Ehlers quick, I did mention he's now tied his season high in both points and assists, 40 assists, 64 goals. Oh no, he's not tied in his season high for assists. It's actually his new season high is 40 assists. But the point total at 64 is his tied season high. So he just needs one more point there to put himself over that hump. And it would be really great, really cool to see him have some playoff success for once, with Carolina, no less. There's just, as you can see, there's just so many reasons, both at the individual level and at the team level, that I really hope that they can make this the year that they go, over the hump, that they get past that barrier that they've been seeing. Again, going back to looking at the standings, I didn't mention anything about the Florida Panthers. I didn't mention anything about the New York Rangers, not even the Toronto Maple Leafs. And again, the Bruins are not the Bruins of 6-7 years ago that have been a pain in your butt. Tampa is not quite the Tampa Bay that it's been. And the other teams that are contenders, other than probably the Penguins and the Islanders, are teams that on paper you should really be able to handle. And I do think in a 7-game series they will, because they'll have that playoff maturity, they'll have that playoff feel, that playoff familiarity, and I do think that will end up factoring into a full 7-game series with any one of those teams, like the Sabres, the Canadiens, or even the Blue Jackets. We'll see. This is going to be a pretty interesting playoff, once it does begin, because it's going to be a pretty interesting set of teams that make the playoffs, as well as it will be interesting to see how things unfold and who we end up meeting, if we end up making it, deep into the playoffs, into the conference finals, as well as the Stanley Cup finals, if we're so lucky. But that is everything I wanted to chat about today, folks. So I do appreciate you listening. I do appreciate you being here with me and tuning in. I hope you're enjoying the reels and the shorts, on Instagram and YouTube. And again, playoffs are right around the corner here, folks. The clinching moment is there. It's about 1 to 2 games away, I would say. I would almost guarantee that next week, I will guarantee that by next week, we will be saying that Carolina has clinched their playoff berth. And now it's just a matter of, are you going to end up being, at home for the majority of your games throughout your conference run? That we shall see. But folks, take care. Have a great rest of your day. And go Canes!